Ladies and gents, welcome to CG Reacts, and this is South Korea is over. What? What kind of a title is that? This is what's on Kurzgesagt. This is where, like, okay, I guess Kurzgesagt is going intense now. It has, I'm pretty sure, like, when I'm recording this, the thumbnail is South Korean flag burning and South Korea is over. Like, what is happening? Is Kurzgesagt getting into politics now? What is happening? This is because of North Korea? I don't know. I don't know what the point of this video is going to be about, but this is why it's going to be awesome. It's been 6 hours and has a million views. This is why. Like, what the hell? People like, this is from Kurzgesagt? What is happening? So let's watch this one. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I like science. I don't know if this is going to be a scientific video, but it's by Kurzgesagt. I like all the Kurzgesagt videos, obviously. So if you want to do any specific reaction, comment down. And yeah, let's watch it.
Sounds brutal, but South Korea is over. This sounds brutal, but South Korea will soon start melting on all fronts. Demographically, economically, socially, culturally, and militarily. Because for decades, the country has been experiencing...
Oh, this is what it's about, like population is declining and all that shit, but that's like with Japan and everything, isn't it? Like, why South Korea?
A fertility crisis unprecedented in human history. And we've probably reached a point of no return. By 2060, the South Korea we know and love today will no longer exist.
I mean, migration, immigrants, like, are we sure about that? Population alone isn't an indication, come on.
What will the collapse look like? And why is it now almost impossible to stop? The real population bomb. To have a stable population, you need a fertility rate of about 2.1 children per woman. In the 1950s, South Koreans used to have 6 children on average. In the 1980s, the rate fell below 2. And in 2023, it was 0.72 kids per woman, the lowest ever recorded in history. In Seoul, fertility is even lower, around 0.55. On average, about half of the women here won't have any kids, and the other half just one. What do these numbers actually...
Alright, is it because when countries get richer, like this is all the rich country problem. Is it because when countries get richer, people get more educated, like why do we need kids, which is like stupid? Right? Why would you not have kids? Or is it because the countries get richer, but there are like so many elements and so many expenses are there, even with 2 jobs, they can't even provide for themselves. How the fuck are they going to provide for the family and like education and all that shit? So family planning, people like, you know what? I can't do that. I don't have the money or future. Is that what it is? Like, I don't know.
Actually mean in the real world? If fertility stays as it is, then 100 South Koreans will have 36 kids. When they grow up, they will have 13 kids who will then have 5. Within 4 generations, 100 South Koreans will turn into 5. If we look at today's South Korean population pyramid, we see this is pretty real. There's only one 1-year-old for 4 50-year-olds. After 4 decades below the replacement level, the consequences were still largely invisible. Today, South Korea's population is at an all-time high, as are its workforce and its GDP, which is still growing. But demographics hits you like a freight train. You hear it vaguely in the distance, and then it runs you over. South Korea is about to be hit. Let's time travel 35 years into the future to 20...
I mean, if there are that many 50-year-olds compared to like a very young population, yeah, economical issues gonna rise like immensely. Not to mention in the future, if it doesn't change somehow, it's gonna get million times worse. But this is a statistic. When I see like in practice, like is there going to be some solution? But like I said, migration and things, we'll see how it turns out.
60 and see what the country will look like then. When it comes to demographics, the most commonly used projections are those put together by the UN. They envisage 3 scenarios: low fertility, medium, and high. But in the past, all medium UN projections for South Korea have consistently been too positive. Between 2022 and 2023 alone, fertility in South Korea dropped by another 8%. So we're going to use the latest low fertility scenario, which has been the most accurate in the last few years. Keep in mind that we're still talking about projections, and the future is a faraway land. Okay, let's do it. In 2060, South Korea's population pyramid will look like this. The population will have shrunk by 30%. 16 million South Koreans will have disappeared in just 35 years. And it'll be the oldest country in human history. 1 in 2 South Koreans will be over the age of 65. Less than 1 in 10 will be under 25. And only 1 in 100 will be small children. Imagine waking up in a country where the streets are strangely quiet with no children playing on them. Entire cities have been abandoned. Half of the population is elderly and living either alone or in overcrowded retirement homes, with a minority of people desperately trying to keep society running. There will
Societies can't have holes. That's just how our societies work and how economy works. So it's not like, oh, there's going to be a lot of abandoned places and like all the old people will be in like one retirement home, very little people around. What is this, apocalypse? That's not how, that's going to be catastrophic, right, for everyone. I don't think that's going to happen. Either migration or robotics might become like more feasible, right? Robots are doing a lot of job. Like we are talking about like really far in the future. So maybe.
A few major consequences. Economic collapse. In 2023, a breathtaking 40% of South Koreans over 65 lived below the poverty line. But in 2060, this number may seem lovely in comparison. Today, South Korea has one of the largest pension funds in the world, worth about 730 billion US dollars. But it's projected to stop growing in the 2040s and be completely depleted by the 2050s. So in 2060, pensions will have to be paid by the working population. Estimates vary, but for a pension system to work, the minimum a society needs is between 2 to 3 workers per retiree paying for them with their tax.
Yeah, I mean, working people are already providing. I mean, that's how surplus works. But yeah, it's going to intensify by then. I don't know, man. I see people will have, at least South Korea is like rich country, right? I think they will have some kind of like a future planning and shit like that to prevent things. I don't know.
Taxes. But even if we assume that all South Koreans over 15 will be working in 2060, the country will have less than 1 worker per senior. Workers will be unable to stem the incredible costs. So not only will poverty among the elderly be common, but a big chunk will be forced to work. Except they may not be able to find jobs because by 2060, the South Korean economy may have collapsed. Broadly speaking, the size of an economy is linked to the size of its workforce. To have a big economy, you need a lot of workers to produce a lot of things and a lot more people to buy them. Today, South Korea has about 37 million people of working age, generating a GDP of about 1.7 trillion US dollars. But by 2060, its workforce would have shrunk.
It was a $1.7 trillion economy for like that small of a population, like that small of a like workers. That is an insane amount of like money, right? Like, what is India's GDP? 2-3 trillions, where people are like immensely high. This like, yeah, I think South Korea is going to be fine. I think like they have enough allies and I guess migration and things. I don't know, man. I just have this hopeful future. Like population decline is not going to be a thing where it all turns to shit. At least I don't see it.
To less than half, to about 17 million. Of course, technological progress means that productivity will be higher and each individual will probably produce more than today. But even if productivity keeps growing at the same rate or more than we've seen in the last decades, South Korea's GDP could peak in the 2040s. In other words, South Korea will enter a permanent economic recession. There are more optimistic projections.
AI. I think we're forgetting AI, as everybody keeps reminding of. AI could like take a lot of workforce themselves, so they might not need people. There's too many variables. Like we can never know. This is like this is one element because of that like is putting here, because there's a million other elements that you can't really foresee.
That see the recession begin as late as 2050, but they're based on the medium UN demographic scenario, and there are no signs that we're heading there. Another factor in the economy is science, technology and innovation, areas in which big leaps are typically made by young adults and the middle-aged. Young people have fresh ideas that contribute to the wealth of society. Significantly fewer people working also means way less tax for the government, which will be trapped between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, having to provide for half the population that are seniors, on the other, seeing its income diminish. It will be forced to shut down or cut essential services like hospitals or social benefits. Since infrastructure only works at scale, smaller communities may be abandoned as the country contracts into its metropolitan areas. And of course, there won't be enough money to invest in the future. This is bad. But what will happen to South Korean society and culture may be worse. Societal and cultural collapse. Speculating on how societies will develop.
Another element is that, like, throughout the history, if you see when a society collapses, it's not a slow slope. I mean, it is that until a certain point where it reaches boiling point and wars break out. Before all this should happen and like South Korea slowly dies, I think North Korea is going to be, you know what, it's time to reunite Korea or some shit, and major war might happen there, right? China might get idea. China is just there. Maybe China would support North Korea. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But the problem here is nothing is ever slow decline. There is a point where everything turns to shit, because that's just how it works. Throughout the history, all the wars, all the empires, when you see it, they reached a point and there's a complete drop, because nothing would slowly decrease like that. People get idea, right? Either people smell blood, or like the people who are declining, they're like, we need to do something drastic.
Develop is extra hard, but there are a few pretty unavoidable trends. Today, already about 20% of Koreans live alone. Also, 20% report having no close friends or relatives. By 2060, 50% of South Koreans aged 70 will have no siblings and 30% will have no children. Young adults between 25 and 35 will only make up 5% of the population and typically have no siblings at all. This leaves the elderly with almost no close family and young adults with little family and few potential friends, especially outside of big cities. A loneliness epidemic of epic proportions is all but guaranteed. On top of that, South Korean culture will probably experience a huge decline. In 2000, there were 17.5 million South Koreans between 25 and 45, and they made up 37% of the population. This was the generation that brought us K-pop, K-drama, K-food, and
Yeah, I highly doubt anything K is going away. K-pop, K-drama, that shit's not going anywhere. How is this a problem? Like, I don't know, incentivize having children or something. I don't know, like drastically. Government can do that.
many other trends.
I don't know, like try to make education like not, if not free, close to free. Anything children related, hospital bills and all that, like some kind of subsidies or something. Incentivize, like if you have children, you're not gonna be screwed. Like government's gonna take care of a lot of things. Even if short term it has a hit on economy, a long term at least that's like good.
Trends that spread around the world. In 2060, there will be just 5.6 million people in that age group, and they'll only be 16% of the population. Many cultural traditions are already struggling because the older generations are having trouble finding young people to pass them on to. As young people disappear, many traditions will die out. Without young people, the soul of South Korean culture will shrink and wither away. And on a personal level, what kind of experience will it be growing up in 2060? What will youth culture be like in a country of seniors, where many universities, schools and kindergartens are abandoned as there are no longer children to fill them with life? What kind of job prospects will they face?
35 years is an insanely long time, especially for the modern times where shit moves really fast, technology and science. We don't know how education is going to work. We don't know how things going to work. For all we know, 2060 things might become so streamlined everywhere. The countries and borders might just be one of those things, like, okay, it exists. Otherwise, everything's global now, education and everything. We don't know how shit's going to work. People might just work online, doesn't matter where you're from. There might be AI-powered things, robotics and everything. Who knows where that's going to go?
And what will politics look like? If young people don't want to remain alone, they'll concentrate in Seoul or a few other big cities, or worse for South Korea, emigrate to other countries. Rural areas will decline and most smaller cities will turn into ghost towns. We're already seeing this in Japan, which has almost 10 million abandoned houses in rural areas. Large parts of South Korea will simply vanish and be reclaimed by nature. Last but not least, South and North Korea are technically at war, and they could very well still be in 2060. Will South Korea still be able to afford to have its young men do 18 months of mandatory military service?
That's the fucked up thing. North Korea can just say, have children. We need children for the good of the country. North Korean population might not decline compared to South Korean one. And there will be a point where North Korea has more troops than South Korea does. That might be a problem.
Today, 5% of men of combat age are enrolled in the military. In 2060, it would have to be 15% just to match today's numbers. Okay, wait, this is all a bit much. Is there no way back? Why, there really is no way back. The problem with the demographic freight train is that once it hits, things become irreversible. Let's say fertility in South Korea magically triples to the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman and stays there. In 2060, it will be an inverted pyramid on top of a barrel. And there would still be only 1.5 people of working age per senior over 65. Even in the best made-up scenario, South Korea has to pass through an unavoidable bottleneck before it will recover. But there is also a kernel of hope here. Yes, the situation is grim, but at least in the long term, recovery is possible if South Korea enacts rapid and societal changes that make its population want to have kids again. In 2024, births rose for the first time in 9 years, 3% more than in 2023. But for that to continue, South Korea needs to face the music and ask how they got to this point. How could it get that bad? In general, as societies get richer, more educated and child mortality plummets, people decide to have fewer kids. What makes South Korea special is that it's...
What do you mean fewer? It's like people are having 10 kids, now they're going to have 5. No, people are not even having 1 kid. That's the problem. The problem is like the economy is not working great. Even though they're richer, their expenses are high. Everything, like where they live, their rent, even with 2 jobs, even in rich countries, people can't even provide for themselves. Like even leisure things becomes more and more like I must have an iPhone, I must have this, I must have that, compared to like not so rich country. So when there's all that like, oh, how am I going to fit my kid into this? Not to mention schools in this country are insanely pricey. Okay, not to mention medical expense. They are also in like all these elements. Like I said, governments have to put subsidies there if they want to incentivize people even thinking about having a kid. Like if people are thinking, if I have a kid, it's going to be fine because most expenses are not going to be that strong. People are going to have kids. That's just how it is.
Somehow supercharging all of these trends. South Korea lifted itself out of poverty in record time, but in doing so it developed a unique kind of workaholism and extreme competitiveness. Although the work week is 40 hours and the legal maximum is 52 per week, unpaid overtime is normal for many, and the government even proposed to raise legal work time to 69 hours per week. Despite this, South Korea has relatively low wages and a high cost of living. Real estate in big cities is out of reach for most people. The cost of education is extremely high, since families have to pay for private lessons if they want to send their kids to a high-tier college. All of this while South Korea spends less on family benefits than most other rich countries. Old-fashioned cultural norms make matters even worse. Marriage is all but mandatory if a couple wants to start a family. In 2023, only 4.7% of babies were born to unmarried women.
Hold up there. If you want to have kids, you must be married. Like, how are you going to enforce that in a free country, in a democratic country? How's that rule working? Yeah, you have to get married. It's mandatory. How? So if you don't get married, both of that in prison? Is that what you're saying?
Out of all developed countries, South Korean men do just about the least share of housework and childcare within their families. This leaves women with a disproportionate amount of work if they want to keep their jobs after a pregnancy, while many men are overwhelmed by the societal expectation to be the main breadwinner and have successful careers. Starting a family or not is a personal decision, and most South Koreans are deciding against it. The bottom line is that South Korea has created a culture that leads to very few kids.
There's also an element of like, okay, we're living in a rich country. Why the fuck would we need a kid? Like, life is great. I don't want to say laziness, but it's like element of laziness. Why go through with all that annoyance of having kid? Like, life is great type of way. There's also element of that, right? Like, when it comes to like somewhat stoicism, I don't know how to say, like, people are like just like to just leisure and calm down. That's why a lot of like rich places, it doesn't matter where it is. Any country you look at it, wherever there's a rich group of people, this is going to be a problem.
Kids. Conclusion. Demographic collapse is not an abstract thing in the future, it's happening right now. And it's not just South Korea. In 2023, China had a fertility rate of 1, Italy and Spain 1.2, Germany 1.4, the UK 1.6, and the US 1.6. Which sounds so much better, doesn't it? Well, after 4 generations, a fertility rate of 1.6 means 60% fewer new people. A fertility rate of 1.2 means 87% fewer
Yeah, anything less than 2 is like a decline, slow.
people. And fertility rates are still falling with no sign of stabilization or recovery. The weirdest thing about all of this is that almost nobody involved in the public discourse has truly grasped the gravity of the situation. The last century was utterly dominated by overpopulation narratives, and people who say that we need more kids seem weird. And if you do the maths, the future just seems to be too insane to be true.
Yeah, it's just like global warming. Like nobody see this problem, nobody gives a shit, right? I work 10 hours a day. Okay, then I go to this place. I have my gym, I have my Pilates, I have my club. Why the fuck would I add a kid into this mix? Again, like leisureness is kind of killing these things. And whenever, like, if you see like poor countries, there's a reason why they have more children, because their life is shit. Adding a children is something they add that maybe will bring them happiness or some shit. So it's just like opposite of that when it comes to rich countries.
Like it's hard to believe. None of this has ever happened before. So low birth rates are mostly discussed in the context of worker shortages, not as the existential threat to our societies, cultures, wealth and our way of life that they are. If we don't take it seriously very soon and change the DNA of our modern societies in a way that encourages young people to start having children again, then the rest of the century will be pretty grim for those of us who will live through it. The demographic freight train stops for nobody. We finally need to realize that it's hurtling down the tracks right at us. Multi-layered issues like
But go to ground.news/KIN and support this channel. I don't think so, man. I think like migration and things, immigrants, like they will have to open doors like that if it becomes too much. Rather than killing the country, they'll let other people in from the poor countries and things. So this doesn't feel like that big of an issue when it comes to the country. But yeah, when it comes to culture, yeah, there might be a problem. Like native Koreans will get like smaller and smaller, which is insane. But even then, I feel like if it reaches a catastrophe level, they will realize, you know, fuck it, like it's now existential thing. Now we need to have kids, and like birth rates will increase. And like, cause I'd say like, yeah, but there is like a limit to, you know, even out. It will take a long time, and it will already reach a point where economy can be sustained. But like I said, immigration, they'll let people in. That's what's gonna happen. So yeah, it's gonna be a problem, but I think it's gonna be fine. This title is like panic. South Korea is over, burning Korean flag. What the fuck? Yeah, I bet people just went like, what the fuck is happening? What is it? Is Korea at war now? Yeah, it's about this. Right, well, if you like my next one, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.